Alright, welcome back to Dimitri's Horror Corner. A friend who's not Tracy, again.
Lizzie. I'm Elizabeth / Lizzie.
This one will probably go up before the Let's Play because the Let's Play is a lot harder to edit.
Yeah, makes sense.
Lizzie came over, so we're doing a couple of videos.
And we're going to talk about a movie called Circle.
Is it The Circle or just Circle?
I think it's just Circle.
It's on Netflix. We watched it a couple of times now. We watched it. I watched it alone. We watched it together. Then we watched it separately a bunch of times, and then we wanted to do a horror corner, so we watched it again today. Kind of. We were playing Magic while we were watching it, but
basically the premise is a bunch of people wake up standing in a room where they're each standing on like a red circle on the floor, and they're all in like a ring. The ring has 2 rows, so you have like an inner row and an outer row, and like the people are staggered. And
there's like 50 people.
Yeah. And there's like this weird thing in the center and arrows going around, sort of like a clock all pointing to each of the people.
Basically they figure out that they're voting on who's gonna die.
And whenever
the thing in the center chooses,
and it like shoots out like this red thing that like strikes the person
and they die.
Dead instantly.
But it's a vote, and they vote by closing their hand.
Yeah, they vote by like moving their hand to like which arrow they want to put on, and then they close it by they close their hand and it's the vote. And it's basically them trying to figure out 1, what this thing is, and 2, deciding who to kill.
Yeah. Because they assume that whoever lives, whoever makes it to the end to be the last one standing will get to go free.
Yeah.
Which they have no evidence for.
Yeah. We should start by saying things we like about it and things we don't like. So,
yeah, it was one of those movies where we were like, it's not a fantastic movie, but it intrigued both of us the first time we watched it.
Yeah.
It has the kind of soft feel of everything happening in one room. But even though everything's happening in one room and nobody moves and there's no real action, the tension stays throughout the film. And it feels like a real situation, and not like a real situation, but the danger of the situation feels real, is what I meant. Dialogue's not great. Some of it's good, some of they need characters to be stereotypical.
Like I said, let's do what we like first. I really like the set. It's a very minimalist set. Like I said, it's basically just everyone standing in a dark room on these red circles.
Right.
With like a thing in the middle. So
their entire budget went into the red lightning.
Pretty much. Like their entire budget basically went to like lighting the floor and like this lightning's like special effect.
We like the guy who lives at the end. We like him.
Kind of.
We don't like him, but we like his character. He's a piece of shit,
but he's a good character.
We like how they developed his character. That's another thing. They do really well with developing the characters in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
A lot of the characters don't get names. Even the subtitle. There's a few that say their names, but they die really quickly.
There's a few who say their names, but they die really quickly. Like most of the credits are just like young girl,
bearded man, like, pregnant woman.
Like one's like a racist asshole, I think.
Oh yeah, that's a big point of the thing is that there's a little girl who's like 10 maybe, and there's a pregnant woman, and people quickly realize that it's got to be one of those two who are going to win because
basically
it's a pregnant woman and a little girl.
You basically have 2 camps of people. You have the camp of people who are we can't kill a pregnant woman or a little girl, so it needs to come down to the 2 of them and let them decide which lives and which dies. And the other camp of the people is fuck that noise. I'm in this for myself.
Right. If they die first, I have more of a chance to live. Is the other camp of people.
Yeah.
Which is another really interesting dynamic. That the social dynamics in this movie are really good, and they don't devote a ton of. That's the main one. There's some other divergent paths they go on, but because people are dying so quickly, they don't devote a ton of time to it. But even though they don't devote a ton of time to each of these characters, the characters are developed in a fairly decent way.
One thing I did like was I liked the Marine character.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like how they didn't make him an asshole because it's very easy to make like the most kind asshole. But he was very much like the voice of reason, where I think he was kind of the one leading we need to have the pregnant woman or the child survive camp.
Some people were stereotypes, and that usually worked in their favor. Like there's the angry asshole atheist stereotype, but he did okay for moving the plot along. The aliens will be dead because I'm gay.
Back to what I like about the Marine is I also like how for a decent amount of time, up until like the bearded, like long-haired douche guy started talking, a lot of people did listen to the Marine, which
Yeah.
In inaccurate for how emergency situations actually go, because humans do, like, very often, like, fall back into you're in a position of authority, so I'm going to follow your command.
A lot of the dialogue wasn't flawless. There was a lot of dialogue that was still clunky and a little weird. But a lot of the way people acted towards each other felt natural.
Yeah.
Especially in a life or death situation where people are panicked, people are trying to figure things out. You have people who have forced calm about them. There's the first couple of minutes of the movie, people are panicking, no one knows what's going on, so people die rapid fire.
And then people figure it out and say, okay, like, when this thing beeps, we have a certain amount of minutes to, like, vote.
And then once they figure out they can vote, they're arguing about how they should vote. And then people die rapidly again because people are arguing about how they vote.
And, like, not focusing. And then, like, they kind of fall into a rhythm of, we can kill this person, this person, this person.
Yeah.
And, like, to kind of keep, like, the discussion going while we try and figure out what to do. And so some of the characters that there are, like I said, there's a Marine character who for a while is sort of in charge, but, like, him and a bunch of people die at one point, like, all together.
Yeah, because they split into the two camps, and then they vote against the two camps, basically, to try to get rid of the opposition so they can kill the pregnant woman and the girl. A couple of things I liked of specific characters. The two characters who pretend to be married. That was really smart. I like that they did that.
And it was interesting because they don't reveal to the audience until, like, everyone else reveals. Because it has two people who are, like, standing next to each other, and they're just like, we're husband and wife, and, like, it's pretty believable for a while until, like, at some point, like, someone's like, if you're married, what's your wife's name?
Right. And it's somebody finally figures out, wait, isn't it kind of convenient that no one else here really knows each other, but you two were put next to each other and you're married?
Yeah, and it turns out that it was a plan they had gotten right when they woke up, like, say we're married.
I don't think it was right when they woke up. Looking it over again, the part where they're like, at least she doesn't have kids, those two looked at each other, and I think that was when they kind of agreed on that plan.
But yeah, at some point they came up with, like, a plan.
But it was we didn't know about it until it was revealed, but it got to the point where at the time they were suspecting. When we watched it, remember, we were also suspecting about the time that the people got it. So there's no really stupid characters. There's a couple. There's, like, the old guy who's screaming about how he's a hard worker, he's a white man, and he didn't do anything wrong, and they should kill the Spanish-speaking guy because he speaks Spanish. And he's dumb, obviously, for yelling like that.
There are a few people who are, like, very obvious assholes, and they get killed pretty quickly just because, like, no one likes them.
And it's dumb to make yourself
and, like, there are, like, people who are definitely assholes, like the bearded guy who's, like, anti, like,
he's supposed to
Marine.
live. He's anti-Marine, and he wanted to live, and he became that, which is...
But he's a douchey character, but he's smart. He's douchey and, like, a smart... He's not, like... an asshole who's just, like, yelling at everyone. He's, like, very much like...
He also wasn't sadistic. He wanted to live.
Yeah, he was kind of just like, look, like, we could...
That's worse.
Which one's the guy?
The guy who lives. I think he's worse than the
he
bearded
is.
guy. Alright, so basically it comes down to this bearded guy versus the one guy who's trying to protect the pregnant woman and child. And we're going to spoil the ending.
And what happens is, like, because those two factions going at each other, what basically happens is, like, they don't, like, time the votes all correctly, and basically just, like, those two factions, like, wipe each other out, essentially. They all, like, have, like, a mass die-off.
Yeah, and it comes down to... Oh, I want to talk about this before we talk about the ending. The climax basically comes down to the guy who's protecting the pregnant woman and child, the pregnant woman, the child, the bearded guy who's against the pregnant woman and child, and a guy who doesn't vote. And I'm really glad I included him as a character because he's such an interesting character, and he had 2 seconds of screen time. He doesn't talk, he doesn't vote. And he makes it to the, like, final, 5?
He does nothing the entire film. He just stands there.
Yeah, and he's there in the beginning. We're like, can we see him in the beginning? And we do. We see him and we watch. He doesn't vote. He doesn't talk.
He basically, like, probably survives by escaping everyone's notice.
Right. That, and I mentioned this last time we watched it. So I'm Jewish, as I mentioned before on the channel, and I study halakha, which is Jewish law. Halakhically, what the guy did was correct. In a Jewish context, what he did is correct.
Because you said, like, in the terms of a Jewish, like, if, like you said, like, if it had been a bunch of Jews in there, none of them would have voted because the right thing to do in that situation is not choose.
Right. Because according to Judaism, by voting, you're choosing to kill someone. If you take no action, their death is not in your hands. So him not voting was the right thing to do in that situation, in my opinion.
And then in the end, when it comes down to, like, so after the two factions have, like, wiped themselves out, it comes down to, like, him this like kind of youngish dude who's
The
probably
guy's been protecting the pregnant woman and child, and
Yeah.
the pregnant woman and child. And they vote out the guy who hasn't voted because the three of them want that, and he
and the guy who
still
doesn't
doesn't say anything. He just kind of accepts it,
yeah.
which I want to say that's what I would do, but you never know what you're going to do
Yeah.
in life or death situations.
And then it's like the guy who's like protecting the pregnant woman and child is like talking to them. It's like, okay, like one of you like
it's going to come down to one of you two.
Like,
so you're going to have to decide.
like I'll step on it, and like the little girl's like decides that like she's going to step off her circle and die, and like the guy's
so
like,
the pregnant woman and her baby.
like you want to save the baby, and she's like, yeah. And it's like, okay. And then like as she goes to step off the circle, the guy who's been protecting the pregnant woman the whole time votes for the pregnant woman, so both the little girl and the pregnant woman die.
Yeah, and he lives.
And he lives. So he basically was playing it like the entire time.
Yeah, and it's the shittiest thing to do.
It's the shittiest thing ever.
I'm
It's like,
so glad it happened, but it was the shittiest thing to do. It was a great.
sort of
We're
like,
gonna talk about. You can end it there. There's a couple places
yeah,
you can end it.
end it there,
And that'll be fine. We're gonna talk about 3 endings.
Yeah.
That's a great ending.
like with him just
We
voting.
were really glad that happened. Not glad that it happened because it's a bad thing that they died, but,
Like it's a shitty
but
thing.
what a great direction for that to take.
Yeah.
And that makes sense that a person would do that.
And it's kind of really interesting because then you need to go back and watch films. Like he's been playing this the entire time. Like
Yeah.
this has been his plan
He
from the
actually
beginning.
he takes a while to talk. The military guy. It's after the military guy gets killed off that
Yeah.
he kind of steps up and he starts talking. And I think it's because he had the plan the other guy had. He was going to be quiet and stay in the background until he needed to talk, which was brilliant of him, and I think makes him a shittier person than the bearded guy. Because at least the bearded guy was upfront about, I want to live, so I
Yeah.
need to kill you. This guy was like, I will protect you, but then he actually killed them.
Mhm.
So he is a shittier person, in my
So
opinion.
that's one way you can act.
That's one ending. The second ending. After he kills the pregnant child, the timer keeps going and he's freaking out because there's no one left and he assumed that he would get to walk away. You can actually split that into a whole other ending and just end with him doing that. But it turns out something happens if you tie, you both light up and then you have to vote again. The fetus apparently counts
Yeah.
in this game.
Because it lights up on him and it lights up on
it lights up
pregnant
on the
woman's
girl's pregnant woman's stomach and on him, and he's like, holy shit. And it takes him a couple of seconds and he votes for the fetus again. And that's another ending there. And we looked on some message boards and people are talking about how that's a huge plot twist. How
It's like a plot hole, but like
A, we're like, well, what about the baby's vote? A, and B, we'll talk about later, you see another pregnant woman who obviously won, and you're like, how did she win without killing her fetus? We think-
determined that probably like the thing probably is there like detecting either heartbeat or like signs of life or something, and
Yeah.
because like the fetus is inside the woman, for whatever like thing this machine's detecting, it's just like, okay, life form standing there, we're just assuming it's one thing, moving on.
Yeah.
And then when she dies, but the fetus hasn't technically died yet, it's just like life form's still there.
Yeah. She was far enough along that,
Yeah, she's heavily pregnant.
so it would have been a time where if she gave birth then, the baby probably could have, we don't know. She was heavily pregnant. The fetus was like a baby by then. It could have been born and been fine, is our point. I don't have to talk about pro-life. Anyway, so that was an interesting thing. And then people brought up the plot hole of that and were like, well, if the mother lived and the baby lived, we're assuming the machine would recognize that as one being and let it go, as opposed to if the mother dies, the fetus counts as one. And that's another ending you could have, is him killing the fetus. And then him walking out the door. Fine.
You can stop with these points at any point.
I suggest stopping there.
Yeah.
This is just stopping before that.
I like the idea of stopping when him like demanding the machine to like know what the machine wants, just because I like the like ambiguity of does the winner get
Right.
to live or is the winner just gonna be
Right.
killed?
The one thing that really bothers me in this, and I think you too, is that...
we can talk about it after. Let's talk about the
Wait.
actual ending first.
No, wait, let me talk about the actual ending, 'cause it's about that. They assume a lot
Yeah.
of things, and all of their assumptions end up being correct with no
Yeah,
explanation.
the assumptions are horrible.
And it's like, they assume one of them gets to live, they assume somebody is doing this, and that they make all these assumptions with little to no evidence.
Well, one thing
One of
that
them-
annoys me is one of the assumptions they make is that the pregnant woman is a single mother, which they
Yeah.
have no evidence for. Like, it's a pregnant
Before
woman.
they even talk to her, they're like, you're a single mom, right?
And she's like, she's a single one. Like, why should one of us like die just because she doesn't know how to use birth control? Like, if I saw a pregnant woman just like standing in a room, my assumption wouldn't be, oh, there's a single mom with her, because she's not. It's not like she's a teenager. She's like mid-20s.
She's a young woman.
She's a young woman, but
she's older than us.
Yeah, like she's a young woman, but like she's perfectly within the age of being able to have gotten married and had to be pregnant with the child of her husband. Like,
yeah,
it's not like if I saw a woman like her age who was pregnant, my first thought would just be that's a pregnant woman. I would assume that she has a husband like somewhere who she's just not currently with. Like, there's
or a wife, and they got the surrogate.
Yeah. Especially since like no one else in the room is like related to each other. Like, it's perfectly reasonable that her husband could be like another thing or something.
Right. And so the ending that really, really bothers us.
Yeah, the ending bothers us because
they assume somewhere in the middle of the movie that it's aliens,
and
they're just like, it's aliens. Aliens want to do it, and there's no evidence. The best line that comes out of that though is the girl saying, "The aliens want me dead because I'm gay, because some homophobic assholes there," and that was a fantastic line.
Yeah, there's a gay woman, and they're like questioning her. It's like, you have a
husband? What does your husband do for a living? And eventually she's like, my wife does whatever.
And they're just like, oh, you're gay, so we should kill you then.
Yeah.
I think the homophobic
I like that the majority of them didn't go with it. The one guy was like, we should kill you because they're gay, and everyone else was like,
yeah, the homophobic assholes when they vote for there is just like, yeah, no.
Yeah. But they assume it's aliens, and with little to no evidence. And it turns out to be aliens.
Yeah.
He walks outside and you see the UFO thing, and he walks up with another group of people who we presume won. And they watch the ship, and that's the ending. And it really pisses me off because why would it be aliens? Also, I didn't need to know who did it.
No.
I didn't need to know. I don't care.
It was a movie that didn't need an explanation. Like,
yeah. It's the tension of the movie comes from not knowing what the situation is and not knowing who the people are. And that's a great setup.
Like, it's one of those movies where it's just like the setup is weird, but it's also kind of like you take it for granted that this is just where the movie takes place. Like, in a room that for whatever reason kills people based on vote. Like, yes, that's a weird premise.
It'd be cool to know, but it wasn't a question we needed answered, especially in such a lame way. That it really was aliens, and they just assumed it was aliens, and their assumption was correct. That really pisses me off. I really hate that ending. I suggest stopping before that.
I definitely like more about the movie than I dislike. The things I dislike,
I still enjoyed it a lot. It's just the ending is a big letdown, but everything else is really good. For me, usually, I've said in a couple of the earlier horror recordings that the ending, like the last 10-20 minutes, can make or break a movie for me. Like Dead Silence, I really like the last 10-20 minutes of that. And that makes up for everything else in the movie because I really enjoyed that last climax. And the end of the movie, it sucks, but the rest of the movie is really intriguing and still worth a look.
So it's better if we just stop. And this is something I was talking to you over Skype. I've never seen the Saw movies, but I've seen this one. And you said this has like a very similar premise of Saw, where it's like people trapped in a room, all dying, and like.
Right. It's. We talked about this. I talked about this in the Saw movie. Saw 1 had a very low budget, so the whole premise of Saw is we only have enough money to put them in one room. So what's our excuse for keeping characters in one room? And this felt like it had a very similar premise. What's our excuse for having characters in one room? What happens when all these characters are in one room? And I think this movie does it a little better.
And the reason why they don't leave the room is because if they step off the circle, they die. Like, instantly, they're killed the second they step off.
It's considered a forfeit. And there's a time earlier where they're like, anyone want to volunteer? And this like 16-year-old kid volunteers. Mm-hmm. And then the asshole doesn't even remember his name.
But, I also think I told you, but like, I've never seen the Saw movies, but like, you'd agree that like, you have though. Would you agree that like this does a better job of, like developing like who the characters are?
This has a much because like which movie was it that we talked about this in? 5 or 2?
I don't remember because I remember it was on one of your horror commercials. Like you mentioned how
I think it was one of the recent ones. I think it was 5.
Because I remember you mentioning and sent you a message over Skype because you were talking in your horror corner about how like none of the characters really had any characterization. And I was like, you know what movie did that really well, where they had like characters in a short amount of time to, like and actually characterize them as a circle. Yeah, The Circle has very little time for 50 characters. It gets down to about 20 speaking parts. Yeah.
And like 4 or 5 main people, really, but that's not a lot of time to develop your premise, to have the game take place, to have all these characters, to make me care that these characters are dying. And I cared that these characters were dying. It makes the characters feel more real than the Saw movies usually do, and a lot of that comes down to the dialogue. Saw is really bad at writing real dialogue. Like we said, some of them are stereotypes. You have the asshole atheist, you have the homophobic bastard, you have the guy who hates immigrants, and you had some stereotypes. You had the black guy who assumed everyone was out to get him. which I'm not saying he's not justified in his position, especially when the cop immediately turned to him and validated that opinion. But it's a horror movie stereotype, and all those stereotypes are there. But a lot of times they worked with the plot. They drove the plot forward. And
like
had
even
enough
like
people...
the homophobic asshole, like that wasn't his only no. Like we had
Right.
seen him talk a few times, and like he was like a businessman. It wasn't until like the woman says she's gay that it comes out that he's like a homophobic asshole.
They felt like real people, and we had very little time to get to know them, but they felt like real people. I mean, most of them felt like real people, which was nice. The girl and the pregnant woman were actually characterized the least because they were less characters and more props.
Yeah, they were more plot points to move the other characters' behavior.
They were the main conflicts, so they didn't become very characterized because they couldn't speak for themselves because everyone was voting around them, and they didn't have a say in a lot of votes because they didn't want anybody to turn against them because of their opinion, which I think is fine. Actually, it's good the way they did that because it makes sense. It makes sense that they would be treated like props in this kind of battle. It makes sense and it's fine, but they're the only ones who really didn't get a lot of characterization. There's a part where they ask the 10-year-old girl, like, "Are you good in school?" I'm like, "So you're gonna kill her if she gets a C?" Like,
I think someone even says
she's
that.
10.
Like,
yes, I think the lesbian woman says that. She's like, she got a C, you're gonna kill her? Like, she's 10 years old. Yeah, they asked her, like, "Do you listen to your parents?" And someone else, she's 10. Calm down. And like it's a little girl at the end and sad, and she's like, "I'm gonna save the baby."
and she steps off, and the guy like kills.
Fuck that guy. Yeah, it's a good movie. You should check it out. You should stop at one of the first two endings. Do not watch the alien.
I say
ending.
stop either when he kills the pregnant woman. You can stop either when he kills the pregnant woman.
There is a blackout in the first. So when it gets to the part where he's yelling at the thing and the timer runs out, it blacks out for a second and then it comes back on the lights.
Yeah.
So you could stop at that blackout, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
Or you could come back to the light and then he kills the thing and then he walks out the tunnel. Stop there.
Yeah.
That's where I would have stopped the movie. If you really wanted to have the fetus scene, which.
You like the fetus scene?
I think it's interesting. I don't think it's necessary to the movie. I think it could have ended.
I like
that.
the fetus scene, but
it was interesting because it like hammered home that this is not a nice guy.
Yeah.
Like before you're like he tried to protect him, but he just wants to live. Now this is an unborn child, and you are consciously saying that you killed the mother, you killed the child. Now you're gonna bring it home again. You're gonna kill that too. He felt no remorse.
I don't dislike the infant scene. I just like the ambiguity more of
right.
it
And I agree. I see the appeal of that also. I just think the fetus scene was an interesting.
Because
it was an interesting direction to go.
Because it's also nice because then, like, if you stop when it cuts to black, you don't necessarily know if if their assumption is correct. And
you don't know if he
clear.
lived or if something. Yeah, which would have been interesting. I think. You did so good, Circle, until the last 10 minutes. Not even 5 minutes.
I feel like that could have been like added in afterwards. Like if someone like.
Yeah, it feels like after that blackout, somebody else started writing.
Like, I wonder if like after, or even like after the fetus scene, if someone was just like, wait, what if they ask questions about how this is happening, quick, and stuff about aliens.
Even after the fetus, because they went to black. I wonder if they wrote it as 3 endings. They went to black. They showed it. And they're like, focus groups show that they want to know what happened to the guy. And they're like, all right, fine. And they wrote in the thing with the fetus. And then they're like, focus groups show that they want to know why they're in that position. And they're like, ugh. So they wrote in aliens.
They're idiots.
They're like, someone said aliens in the thing. Right, all right, make it aliens.
Focus groups are usually idiots.
Focus groups are almost always idiots. You know, Batman the Animated Series didn't focus test well.
Focus groups are the reason why the ending to I Am Legend was changed.
I didn't watch I Am Legend, but yeah, I know about that.
Yeah. How the original ending is like more akin to how the book ends. Well, like the focus group, like the post focus group ending is like your typical like action movie ending.
Yep. So I have to say, what did you rate this movie out of 10? I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10 because I enjoyed it, but the ending really kills it for me.
I give 7.5 whole movie if you cut like
finding out it's aliens.
if you cut that, like if you stop at one of our endings, either post him killing the fetus or like mine, where
then I'd give it an 8.
Then I would give it like 8.5. Like
we did watch it several times.
Yeah.
Like we enjoyed it enough that we kept watching it. So it holds your attention, and for a movie that takes place on one set, that's a good thing that it can hold your attention. Yeah, there are a lot of nuances I miss, like body language and stuff that I missed the first time, that it's fun to watch again and see that, because these aren't terrible actors. Like they're horror movie actors, so some of them suck, obviously, but the main guys, like, they play their part pretty
also, I'm
well.
not sure. Like, are any of them like professional actors, or because this is an indie film? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was an indie film also.
It's like how many of them are like professional? How many of them are like small-time indie actors?
Right,
Because
but
for
they-
small-time indie actors,
Yeah, I don't think there were any like faces I recognized, but they all did a good job. Yeah, the old guy was believable. The asshole was believable as a real person. Yeah, I can't think of anyone who stands out as being super bad at acting. The only thing I will say is the kid, like, closes her eyes and cries for 90% of the film, but she's a 10-year-old girl in a life or death situation.
yeah, that
So I'm not gonna fault her
perfectly.
for that.
To be honest, if I know, I'll probably read it to me. I'd be like fetal on the ground. I'd be like the first one to
The only
die.
thing I said is there's one part where they trick the bearded guy and they kill him before the silent guy. And I'm like, how did the little girl pick up on his little signal if she's busy crying? That was my only thing. But I guess they'd only need the 2 votes for him.
Sure.
Even if she didn't vote. Yeah, that's all I can think to say. The aliens kill me because I'm gay.
And yeah, if you tie, and they also something because we talk about the tie. If you tie, like both lights come down, like you need to do a revote,
Or they both die.
or they both
If
die.
you don't vote.
They do some things early on when they're like learning the rules. They test to see like
Yes,
what goes
then
on.
figuring out the rules makes sense. The way that's why it's so annoying, the assumptions they make, because every other time they're like, let's figure out how this works.
So, like,
and they test
they
their
do a thing where it's like,
hypothesis.
what happens if we force a tie? Like, okay,
Yeah.
both people get selected. And then they're just like, what happens if no one votes? And they find out if no one votes, it just kills a person at random. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so we need to like, and then like I said, like there are like parts where they kind of like kill off some of the more like quieter background people.
They kill a Spanish-speaking guy because
Yeah.
they're like, we need to be able to have conversations about who's.
Yeah.
The first thing they decide is they're going to kill off everyone who's over the age of 50, 60, 70.
It's something like that.
Something like that. They're like, we're going to kill off everyone who's old, and then there's a woman who's like, I am in remission for cancer, and they're like, sorry, and they kill her off. Yeah.
And like they kind of do these things, like they kind of like pick targets that are like obvious that like most of the group is going to go for, kind of like to keep the circle going, to keep like a dialogue constantly flowing, because like every like minute or so, like every few minutes, they need to vote.
Yeah, well, that's like the first decision to make with the old people is like, we're vote in order going around the circle of the people who are older, so we have time to talk while we're voting. Yeah, everyone reacts in a really realistic way. Like the guy who's the Marine was pretty calm most of the time because he's a Marine, so he's used to the life or death situation. He's trying to figure things out. He's trying to help people communicate.
He's trying to be the voice of reason.
And then when they vote for him, he gets angry. He doesn't like accept that. And he gets angry that they're voting for him, which is a realistic way to react to people deciding that you need to die. Yeah, it's a good, intriguing movie. The ending sucks.
The ending sucks, but I would
The ending feels
recommend
like it
it.
was written by somebody else. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Anything else you want to throw out of this
It's
movie?
on Netflix, so it's easy enough to find if you have
Yeah.
Netflix.
It's pretty short too. It's like an hour 20.
Yeah, it's not
maybe
very long.
less. It's a pretty short movie. Like I said, we watched it a bunch of times, so no matter what our complaints are, we obviously enjoyed it that
Yeah.
much. Alright.
Okay.
Leave comments.
Leave
Tell me
comments.
what movie to watch. Please give me attention. Alright.
Goodbye.